I was jolted awake by a ray of morning sunlight piercing through the window. As my eyes fluttered open, I found myself staring at rose-pink curtains swaying gently in the breeze. Confusion washed over me immediately. The curtains in my bedroom were bright golden yellow, not pink. This wasn't right. I glanced around the room frantically, my heart beginning to race. A delicate nightstand sat beside the bed with an ornate vanity mirror reflecting the unfamiliar space. A wooden rocking chair occupied the corner, and against the far wall stood a pink wardrobe that I'd never seen before. The entire layout was completely different from my own bedroom. This wasn't my room. Where on earth was I? Panic started to set in, and I nearly bolted upright when I felt a sudden weight pressing against my waist. An arm was draped across my body, holding me close. I could feel a man's warm breath against my ear as he murmured drowsily, "Veronica, what time is it?" The voice was familiar, too familiar. My blood ran cold. Who was Veronica? Was he talking to me? I slowly turned my head, almost afraid of what I might see. When my eyes finally focused on the man lying beside me, I felt my entire world tilt on its axis. It was Marcus, my husband, Marcus. My eyes widened in complete disbelief. How could this be possible? He'd told me he was away on a business trip to the neighboring city. What was he doing here? I shook him awake urgently, my hands trembling. He opened his eyes slowly, looking at me with bleary confusion, clearly still half asleep. "Marcus, weren't you supposed to be on a business trip in the city?" I demanded, my voice shaking. He squinted at me, furrowing his eyebrows in bewilderment. "Veronica, have you completely lost your mind? Don't you remember? That was the excuse I gave Jasmine so I could be with you." His words detonated in my mind like a bomb. Jasmine, that was me. I was Jasmine. But he'd lied to me, telling me he was on a business trip, and instead he'd been here with this woman named Veronica. He was cheating on me. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My blood boiled, rushing straight to the top of my head. Without thinking, I raised my hand and slapped him hard across the face. The sharp crack echoed in the quiet room. Marcus was completely stunned by the blow, covering his face with his hand as he stared at me in shock and anger. "It's early in the morning. Why did you hit me?" he shouted. But then something dawned on me. He'd called me Veronica. I looked around the strange room again, processing the situation. Suddenly, it became terrifyingly clear, I wasn't Jasmine anymore. Somehow, impossibly, I had become someone else. In that instant, memories that weren't mine flooded into my consciousness. The original owner of this body's experiences, thoughts, and recollections poured into my mind in an overwhelming torrent. I was forced to receive them all while pretending to remain calm. It was an intensely uncomfortable sensation, and it took quite a while before that invasive feeling finally faded away. I had to stay calm. I had no idea why or how I'd transformed into this unfamiliar woman named Veronica, but I needed to figure things out before I revealed anything. I quickly withdrew my hand, forcing myself to suppress the volcanic anger bubbling inside me. I put on a sweet smile and said softly, "I had a nightmare that you actually went to the city for business. I just wanted to check if it was real, to see if you were lying to me." I needed to stay calm. I had absolutely no idea what was happening. Marcus still looked at me with suspicion in his eyes. I maintained my smile, then leaned in and gave him a gentle kiss on the cheek. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't dare hit myself, I'm scared of pain," I said, acting coy in a way that felt completely foreign to me. "I'm actually nothing like this. I never act cute or say such mushy, flirtatious words. Yet somehow, this body did it all so naturally, as if these behaviors were second nature to Veronica." Only then did Marcus seem to believe me. He relaxed and planted a loud kiss on my cheek, saying affectionately, "Then I'll go wash up and buy you breakfast. You sleep a little longer, okay?" With that, he headed toward the bathroom, and soon I could hear the sounds of him washing his face and brushing his teeth. Breakfast? Letting me sleep in? Marcus had never been this kind of person back home. It was always me who got up early to make breakfast so he could sleep longer. He never once offered to let me rest while he took care of things. But now he was so thoughtful and kind to this woman, giving her consideration and attention that I'd never received in all our years of marriage. In that moment, my heart turned ice cold. I looked across the room at the vanity mirror and saw an unfamiliar face staring back at me. She was very young, probably only in her 20s, with a sexy and alluring appearance. Even in her pajamas, she looked attractive and captivating. She was nothing like me, plain, unattractive, rigid, and boring. If I were a man, I thought bitterly, I'd probably choose the woman in the mirror too. But what exactly had happened? Why had I become her? How was this even possible? Yet if I hadn't become her, I realized with a chill, I probably never would have discovered that Marcus was cheating on me. After all, I'd trusted him completely and without question. Marcus finished washing up and came over to give me another kiss. I dodged slightly but still let him, afraid that showing too much resistance would make him suspicious. After he left the apartment, I began looking around the house more carefully, trying to understand Veronica's life. Then I picked up the phone sitting on the nightstand. This was Veronica's phone, not mine. Relying on the memories I'd absorbed from this body, I unlocked the phone with her passcode and opened the messaging app. I found her chat history with Marcus, and what I saw made my stomach drop. There was so much conversation between them that I couldn't even scroll to the very beginning. Page after page of intimate messages, affectionate exchanges, and loving words filled the screen. In the past, I'd occasionally checked Marcus's phone out of vague suspicion, but it had always been completely clean with nothing suspicious at all. Now it made perfect sense. He must have been meticulously deleting everything to hide his tracks. As I read through their messages, my heart grew heavier and colder with each line. Honey, I want to eat strawberries. Please buy some on your way home. Sweetie, I miss you so much. Come back soon. Every time you come home to me, I miss you desperately. It breaks my heart just thinking about you having to share a bed with that ugly woman. That ugly woman was me. Jasmine. His wife. And Marcus had replied to every single one of her messages, saying he missed her too and would come home early to see her. With trembling hands, I kept scrolling upward through their conversation history until I reached their earliest messages, the very beginning of their relationship. I wanted to see how this had all started. When Veronica had first asked if he was single, how had Marcus replied? My heart sank as I read his response, I am married, but I don't love her. Divorce is inevitable sooner or later. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Upon closer inspection, I noticed a specific date in their conversation that made me freeze. It was Valentine's Day. My eyes widened involuntarily as I read the messages from that day. Veronica had written, Darling, are you almost here? I've been waiting at the restaurant for so long. If you don't come soon, I'll go on a date with someone else. Marcus had replied in a doting tone, Almost there, baby. Just wait a few more minutes. I'll have a surprise for you later. But that was the same Valentine's Day when Marcus told me he was working overtime at the office. I'd waited for him until very late into the night, but he never came home. I was pregnant at the time. All I wanted was a simple glass of water, but when I tried to get it myself, I accidentally slipped and fell. My mother-in-law, who always looked down on me and treated me with disdain, wasn't home either. She was never around when I needed her, always out somewhere having fun with her friends. By the time Marcus finally came back in the early hours of the morning, I was already lying unconscious in a pool of blood on the floor. They rushed me to the hospital in a panic, but it was too late. The baby couldn't be saved. I was absolutely inconsolable, having lost my child. During that terrible time, I did nothing but cry every day, living in a complete daze. Half a year had passed since then, and I still hadn't fully recovered from the trauma. With my hands still trembling, I tapped open Veronica's social media profile and scrolled through her posts. It was all about showing off her love with Marcus, romantic photos, sweet captions, declarations of affection. When I scrolled to Valentine's Day, sure enough, there was a post from that night. In the picture, Veronica held a beautiful bouquet of roses. A ring sparkled on her finger as she smiled sweetly at the camera. Both the flowers in her hands and the joy radiating from her face were surprises from Marcus. The caption read, "Wishing everyone a happy Valentine's Day." So working overtime had been a lie. Business trips had been lies. Everything had been lies. While I was pregnant with his child, Marcus and Veronica were secretly dating behind my back. While I was at home alone, slipping and falling and losing our baby, he was with her, giving her roses and jewelry and all the romantic gestures I'd never received. The surprises, the affection, the consideration, he'd never given any of that to me. And I'd been so naive, so overjoyed to be bearing his child, never suspecting a thing. My baby. My innocent baby. You died for nothing, because of their betrayal. I fell to my knees on the floor, crying my heart out. That despicable bastard, I whispered through my tears. I will never let you get away with this. I quickly got up and freshened myself up, washing my face and fixing my appearance. I had no idea what would happen next or how long I'd be trapped in this body, so my first priority was to fool Marcus. I needed to convince him that I was really Veronica, so he wouldn't suspect anything was wrong. After finishing my morning routine, I looked at the radiant, youthful face in the mirror and couldn't resist touching it. The skin was truly smooth and flawless. If she hadn't stolen my husband, I thought with dark irony, I might have even liked her a bit. Suddenly, I heard the door lock click, making me shudder. I saw Marcus walk in carrying bags of takeout food. Seeing him, I wanted to rush forward and slap him again with all my strength. But I forced myself to hold back. Veronica, I know you like sandwiches, so I went out of my way to buy these from that place 2 blocks away. Come and eat, Marcus said cheerfully, pulling me from the dressing table over to the dining table. He held a sandwich up to my lips. I don't actually like eating sandwiches at all, Jasmine doesn't. But Veronica apparently does, so I forced myself to eat one despite my personal dislike. Then I looked up at Marcus and asked casually, "When are you going back home?" My question seemed to catch him off guard. He looked at me somewhat puzzled and said, "The day after tomorrow." I told Jasmine I'd be on a business trip for 4 days, so these 4 days are all yours, baby. After saying this, he even leaned over and kissed my cheek affectionately. I felt nauseated but maintained my composure. "Sweetie," I said, suppressing my disgust and pretending to be curious, "every time you go on a so-called business trip, you're actually lying to her to spend time with me, aren't you? Aren't you afraid she'll eventually find out?" In truth, my heart was trembling like a leaf in a storm. Marcus took a bite of his sandwich and replied with complete disdain in his voice, "She's so stupid. Otherwise, how could she not have noticed anything in almost 2 years? Besides, even if she did find out, I wouldn't care. After all, she's the one who's afraid of divorce, not me." A deep chill ran through my entire body. "Why do you say that?" I asked quietly. "Because she has no parents, no family, and no one to rely on. Where would she even go without me?" Marcus's indifferent tone drifted across the table. Yes, that was my biggest weakness, my greatest vulnerability. I didn't have a strong support system or family backing that would allow me to confidently leave this marriage. That's exactly why I'd endured so much for so long. "So when are you actually going to get divorced from her?" I asked, pretending to be an impatient mistress. "I can't wait forever, darling. Didn't she just lose a child? Let's give it some more time to seem appropriate," Marcus said with a shrug. "But don't worry, Veronica. It really won't be much longer. When the time comes, I'll have my mother come over to discuss our wedding plans. She absolutely adores you anyway." I was shocked to my core. So even my mother-in-law knew about this affair and approved of Veronica. The betrayal ran even deeper than I'd imagined. Seeing my stunned expression, Marcus asked, "What's wrong? Are you dumbfounded? Or don't you believe me? Don't worry, my mom has plenty of money and won't treat you badly." I knew my mother-in-law was wealthy. Their family was quite well off financially. That's why everyone used to tell me I'd accumulated good karma in my past life to have the fortune of marrying into such a family. Of course I believe you, I said, forcing enthusiasm into my voice. I'm just overjoyed. But honey, maybe you should actually go back home first this time. I just got a call saying I need to work overtime today. The information was too overwhelming. I desperately needed some time alone to process everything calmly and figure out my next move. Marcus looked astonished and clearly displeased. Then go ahead and work. But I'll wait for you here at the apartment. I don't want to go back home. But this business trip was supposed to last 4 days, I protested weakly. Hearing his stubborn words, my anger surged straight to the crown of my head. In the past, Marcus was always the one rushing out the door, unwilling to stay home with me for even a single moment, let alone wait patiently for me to finish something. Now, even in this situation, he absolutely refused to leave when I told him to go. If I hadn't clenched my fists so tightly that my nails dug painfully into my palms, I might have slapped him again right then and there. The sharp pain in my hands reminded me to stay calm and maintain my cover. I forced another smile onto my face and said sweetly, "All right, thank you, darling. I really appreciate it. I'll be going out to work now." After saying that, I picked up Veronica's handbag and left the apartment as quickly as I could. I had never been to this neighborhood before and almost couldn't find my way to the street exit. I had to rely entirely on Veronica's absorbed memories to navigate my way out. Standing on the sidewalk, watching the bustling traffic and countless strangers passing by, I crouched down on the ground feeling completely lost and overwhelmed. My husband had been cheating on me, and somehow I had swapped souls with his mistress. What was I supposed to do next? Where could I even begin? I decided to go to Veronica's workplace. According to the memories I'd received, she worked in real estate sales. No wonder she was so young and sexy. This industry naturally favored women like her, as their appearance and charm helped them sell properties more effectively to male clients. As soon as I arrived at the office, before I could even process my surroundings or figure out what to do, a young woman ran over to me excitedly and whispered, "Veronica. Why are you here? Didn't you say Marcus was coming to see you and that you'd be spending the next few days with him?" I was startled. How did this colleague know about Marcus? But then, thinking more carefully, I realized that Veronica had apparently bragged to her coworkers about her wealthy boyfriend quite openly. Since Marcus came from a well-off family compared to most people at this company, Veronica's colleagues all thought she'd successfully landed herself a rich guy. So Marcus was already an open secret in Veronica's social circle. She hadn't even tried to hide the affair. I smiled awkwardly and said, "Oh, I just came to pick up a few things from my desk." With that excuse, I walked over to Veronica's workstation and sat down. I turned on her computer and began aimlessly browsing through her files, not really sure what I was looking for. Then I came across a password-protected folder buried in her documents. Using Veronica's memories, I entered the password and opened it. My jaw literally dropped. The folder was filled with photos and videos of Veronica and Marcus together. Some were normal couple photos, them at restaurants, at parks, taking selfies. But others were definitely not appropriate for public viewing. There were explicit videos of them in bed together, intimate recordings of their most private moments. I felt so sick that I turned and vomited violently into the nearby trash can. I could hardly believe what I was seeing. The betrayal was even more extensive than I'd imagined. After composing myself, I quickly went out to a nearby electronics store and bought a USB flash drive. I returned to the office, copied absolutely everything from that folder onto the drive, and then hid it carefully in my bag. All of this material would become crucial evidence to destroy them both when the time was right. Suddenly, a notification popped up on Veronica's phone, a friend request on social media. I glanced at the profile picture and my heart nearly stopped. I recognized it immediately. It was my own social media account. The profile photo was definitely me, Jasmine. I clicked to examine it more carefully, and sure enough, it was unmistakably my account. For a long moment, I sat completely stunned, unable to process what this meant. Then understanding slowly dawned on me. It must be Veronica. Her soul must have swapped into my body, just as my soul had somehow ended up in hers. She'd already figured out that we had switched places, and now she was desperately trying to contact me. I stared at the friend request for a moment, then decisively ignored it. Let her spend some quality time with my formidable, judgmental mother-in-law first. I wanted her to experience what I'd endured for years. It was nearly evening when I finally returned to Veronica's apartment. Just as I was about to enter, I heard laughter and cheerful voices coming from inside. I froze in confusion. Wasn't Marcus supposed to be the only one there? When I stepped inside, I saw a middle-aged couple sitting comfortably with Marcus in the living room. They appeared to be just about to have dinner together. Seeing me walk in, the middle-aged woman's face lit up with delight. She came rushing over to embrace me warmly. "My dear Veronica is back," she exclaimed happily. I glanced at the two people behind her, the man and woman, and instantly understood who they were. These were Veronica's parents. "Veronica, your parents arrived while you were out, so I just cooked some simple dishes to entertain them," Marcus called to me from the dining area. "Come help me bring out the food quickly." We came too suddenly without warning. "Marcus didn't know we were coming either," Veronica's father said, looking at me with a smile. "Go help him out now, dear." Then he actually pushed me gently toward the kitchen. So Veronica's entire family already knew about her relationship with Marcus. They knew their daughter was involved with a married man, and not only did they not object, they seemed to fully support it. I suppressed all my questions and went to help in the kitchen, trying not to speak too much for fear of saying something wrong and revealing that I wasn't actually Veronica. When all the food was finally served on the table, Marcus poured wine for Veronica's parents and urged them to eat and enjoy themselves. They all seemed to be having a wonderful time together, laughing and chatting like old friends. Meanwhile, I was seething with rage inside, barely able to maintain my calm facade. Suddenly, Veronica's father set down his wine glass and asked directly, "Marcus, when exactly are you going to divorce your wife and marry our Veronica?" They actually knew their daughter was the other woman, the homewrecker, and they didn't object to it at all. In fact, they were pressuring Marcus to hurry up and finalize things. Veronica's mother chimed in enthusiastically, "That's right, Marcus. You and our Veronica have been together for nearly 2 years now. You can't keep her waiting forever, can you? She deserves to be made an honest woman." I quickly lowered my head, pretending to be shy, but really I was dying to hear how Marcus would respond to this direct questioning. "I completely understand your concerns," Marcus said, standing up and addressing them with confidence. "I will act as soon as possible, no later than half a year from now. I've already discussed this thoroughly with my mother too, so please rest assured that I'm serious about my intentions toward Veronica." If I hadn't been keeping my head down, they surely would have noticed the absolute fury blazing in my eyes. It was becoming impossible to conceal my emotions. "Veronica dear, what's wrong? You're practically crushing that cup," Veronica's mother suddenly said, looking at me with concern. Startled by her observation, I glanced down at my whitened fingertips. I had been gripping the water glass so tightly that my knuckles had turned completely white. I had failed to properly mask my emotions after all. I quickly released the cup and stood up, forcing a blush onto my face as I explained sheepishly, "I'm just so nervous. I was afraid Marcus might say he wouldn't marry me after all." Marcus immediately came over and took my hand in his, promising earnestly, "Today, right here in front of your parents, I swear to you that I will definitely marry you, Veronica." I replied softly, "Okay." Inside, I was thinking, "You'll definitely regret making that promise." Later, Veronica's mother and I were cleaning up together in the kitchen. She kept talking, essentially brainwashing me about how I needed to hold on tightly to Marcus, this rich man, who could provide such a good life. According to Veronica's memories, her family was originally from the countryside and was now renting a modest place in the city. Marcus wasn't exactly rich by the city standards, but compared to Veronica's family's financial situation, he was certainly much better off. Just then, Veronica's mother's phone rang. She asked me to fetch it for her from where she'd left it on the counter. Marcus and Veronica's father had gone out to the balcony to smoke, so they weren't nearby. When I picked up the phone, I suddenly noticed something odd about a text message displayed on the screen. It read, "When are you coming back? I miss you." I frowned in confusion. Wasn't Veronica's father right there on the balcony? Then who had sent her mother this intimate message? I kept my suspicions to myself and simply handed the phone to Veronica's mother without comment. She glanced at the message, and I saw a sweet, almost flirtatious smile creep onto her lips. Then she seemed to suddenly remember I was standing there and gave me a quick, nervous look. I quickly busied myself with cleaning the kitchen, pretending I hadn't seen anything. It was quite late by the time we finished, so Veronica's parents decided to stay overnight. The apartment wasn't very large, but it happened to have 2 bedrooms, so they took the guest room. When Veronica's mother went to take a shower, I casually picked up her phone from where she'd set it down and started playing with it, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Neither Veronica's father nor Marcus noticed anything unusual. They probably thought it was perfectly normal for a daughter to fiddle with her mother's phone. Many middle-aged and elderly people don't bother setting passwords on their phones, and fortunately, Veronica's mother was one of them. I quickly unlocked it and found the person who had just sent that message. The conversation thread was still there, though there weren't many messages, just a few recent ones. It seemed all the previous chat history had been deliberately deleted. The man had asked when she'd be returning home, saying he missed her. Then, in a following message, he'd asked if she could lend him some money. And that foolish woman had actually transferred him 2,000 yuan without hesitation. I quickly took screenshots of everything with Veronica's phone and saved the evidence. I'd heard the saying, like mother, like daughter, before, but I'd never truly believed it until now. With a mother who conducted affairs behind her husband's back, it was no wonder her daughter had become a mistress who destroyed other people's marriages. I couldn't help but wonder how Veronica's father would react after discovering the truth about his wife's infidelity. That evening, Marcus wanted to be intimate with me, but I made an excuse about my parents being in the next room, saying it would be too awkward and inappropriate. He had no choice but to lie down dejectedly beside me, mumbling to himself about what a rare opportunity wasted, since we'd have to go back the day after tomorrow anyway. Suddenly, I turned around and slapped him hard across the face without warning. Marcus was completely stunned by the sudden violence, covering his face and staring at me in shock. I knew I had no good reason to hit him as Veronica, but I simply couldn't control my rage. I'd strike first and explain later. After hitting him, I quickly said, "Humph. It's your fault for not divorcing that ugly wife sooner to marry me. I've been suffering for so long, and I'm tired of waiting." Marcus had initially been furious, but after hearing my explanation, his anger subsided considerably. Instead, he tried to comfort me, saying gently, "I'm sorry, Veronica. I know I've wronged you. Please be patient just a little longer." But I wasn't finished. I pushed him away forcefully and then kicked him, sending him tumbling right off the bed. He fell with a loud thud, hitting the floor hard enough to make him grimace in pain. He stood up slowly, glaring at me with barely contained rage, but mindful of Veronica's parents sleeping in the next room, he could only lower his voice to an angry whisper. "Veronica, what the hell do you think you're doing?" he demanded. I sneered inwardly but maintained my sweet exterior. I went over to him and cupped his face in my hands, saying with manufactured affection, "I just can't bear the thought of you going back to her. Just thinking about you sleeping in the same bed with that woman makes me so angry I could scream. I had to hit you, otherwise my heart aches too much. It's only because I love you so much." I felt utterly disgusted with myself for saying such sickeningly sweet words, but to my amazement, Marcus completely bought it. His anger instantly vanished. He grabbed my hands and said earnestly, all right, don't be upset anymore. I promise I'll speed things up and divorce Jasmine so I can marry you very soon, okay?" I answered with a soft, "Okay," then viciously pinched his waist with all the strength I could muster, twisting the skin hard. But Marcus, thinking I was just being playfully sulky and affectionate again, immediately tried to soothe me with more sweet words. I almost laughed out loud. This beautiful face was incredibly convenient. If I were still in my original body as Jasmine and had done any of these things, Marcus would have probably screamed at me and called me crazy. But as the attractive Veronica, he tolerated and even enjoyed my volatile behavior. The next morning, we were abruptly woken by urgent, aggressive knocking on the front door. I didn't want to get up at all. I'd suffered from terrible insomnia the entire night, falling asleep only near dawn, and I was exhausted. I made Marcus answer the door instead. He rubbed his eyes sleepily and went to see who was making such a racket so early in the morning. Then I heard the sharp crack of a slap, and I was instantly jolted wide awake. I got up quickly and froze in absolute shock at what I saw. My own body, Jasmine's body, was standing right there in the doorway. Veronica's soul was clearly inhabiting it now, and she had somehow tracked us down to this apartment. She had just slapped Marcus hard across the face and was now angrily demanding, "Why didn't you reply to any of my messages last night?" Marcus looked as if he'd been struck by lightning, completely stunned and unable to form words. Of course he hadn't replied. I'd had insomnia last night, and when I saw his phone light up repeatedly with notifications, I'd picked it up to check. Veronica had sent him numerous desperate messages, saying things like she didn't understand why she'd suddenly turned into Jasmine's body, and describing how she'd gotten into an argument with my mother-in-law and been slapped for her bizarre behavior. After reading all her frantic messages, I'd felt smugly satisfied and had deliberately deleted every single one of them. Now, seeing me standing behind Marcus in Veronica's body, the woman in my original body spotted me and immediately lunged forward, trying to hit me. But did she really think I'd just stand there and let her? I dodged easily and even slapped her back, demanding loudly, "Who the hell are you? How dare you come to my house and cause trouble like this?" I simply pretended to know absolutely nothing about the soul swap. She was completely stunned by my slap, covering her face and looking at me in utter confusion. "Aren't you Jasmine?" she cried. "Then why are you here with Marcus?" Marcus finally snapped back to reality at this point. He pulled the woman in Jasmine's body aside roughly and shielded me protectively, asking her, "What are you doing here? Have you completely lost your mind? Marcus, don't you remember me?" "I'm Veronica," she cried desperately, running forward to grab his arm. Marcus stared at her, then looked back at me in bewilderment, clearly trying to process this insane situation. Finally, he said dismissively, "Are you crazy? You're clearly Jasmine, my wife." "What are you talking about? Is she really Jasmine?" I asked, pretending to be scared and confused. I hid weakly behind Marcus, playing the frightened girlfriend perfectly. According to Veronica's memories, she had never actually seen Jasmine in person. She only knew that Marcus had a wife named Jasmine, but they'd never met face to face. Marcus replied awkwardly, "Yes, that's my wife." The woman in my body couldn't hold back anymore. She charged at me again, shouting furiously, "You bitch! Who the hell are you? Why did you steal my body? Give it back to me right now, or I swear I'll kill you." Marcus moved to shield me so I wouldn't be hit, but before the woman could reach us, she was suddenly grabbed from behind. I heard the sound of sharp slaps as Veronica's mother yanked her hair violently while her father struck her across the face repeatedly. "How dare you try to hit my daughter?" Veronica's father yelled. "I'll kill you first. How dare you lay hands on my precious Veronica?" Veronica's mother grabbed the woman's hair with one hand while pinching her mercilessly with the other, scratching and clawing viciously. If not for the completely inappropriate timing, would have burst out laughing. She was literally getting beaten up by her own parents. How ironic was that? The woman in Jasmine's body was slapped several times across the face and pinched so hard she wailed in pain, screaming through her tears, "Stop. Please stop hitting me. I'm your daughter. I'm Veronica." Her desperate words worked like magic. Veronica's parents immediately froze in shock. Veronica's father stared at her and asked slowly, "What did you just say?" With her face now swollen and bruised from the beating, she cried out desperately, "I'm Veronica. Mom, Dad, it's really me." I quickly stepped forward and kicked her for good measure, saying indignantly, "Marcus just confirmed that you're Jasmine, his wife. Yet you dare to impersonate me? Do you think my parents are complete fools who can't recognize their own daughter? Veronica's parents looked at the bruised, swollen woman in front of them, then looked back at me, young, beautiful, and unscathed, and seemed to reach an immediate conclusion. They yelled at her furiously, "How dare you hit our daughter while claiming to be her? Get the hell out of here right now." My original body wasn't particularly attractive to begin with, and now with a bruised and swollen face from all the beating, it looked even worse than usual. Veronica's parents would never believe that this damaged woman was their beautiful daughter, especially when the real Veronica, or so they thought, was standing right there looking perfect and pretty. Looking at my own body's injured face, I could almost feel the pain, but thankfully, since we'd swapped bodies, all that pain belonged to Veronica now, not to me. Marcus stepped in and said to Veronica's parents, "Please don't be angry anymore. After all, she's still legally my wife. Please stop hitting her." The woman in Jasmine's body glared at me with absolutely venomous eyes. "Bitch," she screamed. "You home-wrecking bitch." She hurled insults at me, flailing her arms wildly in rage. I couldn't help but laugh internally. Had she seriously mistaken her role in all this? She was the actual homewrecker, the mistress, the other woman. But somehow, having ended up in the wife's body, she'd started actually believing she was the wronged party. "You're just occupying Jasmine's position temporarily," I said, staring at her with a challenging smile. "Marcus loves me, not you." She was so furious she could barely breathe. She lunged at me once more, completely out of control. Before she could reach me, Marcus slapped her hard across the face himself. "Stop making a scene here," he snapped coldly. "Get out." Though the blow physically landed on Veronica, those harsh words were really meant for me, for Jasmine, his actual wife. The wife catches her husband with his mistress, only to be struck by her own husband and told to leave. How utterly devoid of love must that marriage be? The woman in my body tried to speak again, tried to explain, but watching as Veronica's parents kept calling me our daughter, while dismissing her as a lunatic, watching them stand firmly by my side and shield me throughout the entire confrontation, seemed to break something inside her. Her own parents were protecting a complete stranger and violently attacking her. Who knows what that must have felt like to witness from her perspective? But was this enough revenge? Far from it. This was only the beginning. The first round of our battle concluded with Veronica's complete defeat. Marcus eventually took the woman in Jasmine's body home. I was absolutely certain that Marcus would give me all the juicy details about how the drama unfolded after their return. Veronica's parents returned to their rented house the next day, leaving me alone in the apartment. The following day, I went to work at Veronica's company. Truth be told, I really wasn't cut out for her sales job at all. I had no experience or natural talent for it. As I sat at the desk feeling utterly lost and uncertain about what to do, Veronica's phone suddenly rang with a new message. It was from one of her clients, a married man who said he wanted to view a property but preferred to meet and discuss things in person first. Just then, a female colleague happened to walk by and saw the message on my screen. She looked slightly surprised and commented, "Oh, that client? Although he's married, he's quite wealthy. Many of our colleagues have tried to secure his business, but he unexpectedly chose to work with you, Veronica. However, I should warn you, dealing with this particular client might seriously damage your reputation." I asked her curiously what she meant. She explained in a low voice, "Because he's too rich and notorious for fooling around with women outside his marriage. Meanwhile, his wife keeps a very tight rein on him and watches him like a hawk. A while back, there was a female colleague here who got too close to this man while trying to sell him a house. His wife found out, came to the office, and beat up our colleague terribly. The poor woman ended up completely humiliated and was eventually forced to resign." A brilliant idea suddenly struck me. Humiliated and forced to resign? Perfect. I would use Veronica's identity and reputation to achieve exactly that outcome, getting her fired in disgrace. And this wealthy married man could help me kill two birds with one stone. I started accepting his invitations but playing extremely hard to get. I told him very clearly that I would only sleep with him after he actually purchased the property, not before. Then I deliberately started cooling things off, keeping him at arm's length. Women who are too eager and available aren't attractive to men like this. I needed to seem like a challenge. Over the next few days, I engaged in an exhausting battle of wits with this client, trying to manipulate him into buying the property while simultaneously making absolutely sure he never got to take advantage of me physically. It was utterly draining. I simply wasn't cut out for dealing with cunning, manipulative older men with too much money and too few morals. Originally, I could have just immediately ruined Veronica's reputation through other, simpler means, but I also genuinely wanted this real estate deal to go through successfully so I could earn a substantial commission as a financial safety net for myself. I didn't know if Marcus had been persuaded or convinced by Veronica's claims about the body swap, but notably, he hadn't contacted me at all in the past several days. Just as I was wondering what to do next and whether my plan was working, Marcus suddenly messaged me saying he'd come to see me that evening. I casually ordered some takeout to bring home for dinner. There was absolutely no way I was going to cook for him again. He shouldn't expect another home-cooked meal from me ever again. Marcus looked somewhat haggard and exhausted when he arrived at the apartment. His face was so gloomy and dark it looked like it could drip water. I was momentarily stunned. Could he have actually figured out the truth about the body swap? He kept staring at me intently without speaking. The silence stretched on uncomfortably. After a long while, he finally said heavily, "She's completely lost her mind." After we got back home, she kept insisting over and over that she was Veronica, not Jasmine. I didn't believe her ridiculous claims, so she started getting violent, hitting me and even smashing my phone to pieces. Only then did I notice that Marcus had indeed changed to a different phone. He continued, "Later, she was apparently terrified that I'd leave the house, so she actually locked me in our bedroom for an entire day. I had no phone and couldn't contact anyone. If my mother hadn't come back home when she did, I don't know how much longer that crazy woman would have kept me imprisoned." Marcus pounded the table in frustration as he spoke, his anger clearly genuine. I sneered inwardly, absolutely delighted, but outwardly I pretended to be concerned as I asked gently, "Then how did you finally get out? Did she hurt you badly, sweetheart?" He patted my hand reassuringly and said, "My mom helped me escape when she came home and discovered I'd been locked up all day. She was absolutely furious. She beat that woman up severely and then let me out." What a classic case of dog eat dog, I thought with satisfaction. "You're still the best, Veronica," Marcus said, trying to pull me into a hug. So beautiful and gentle and understanding. I dodged away, feeling utterly disgusted by his touch. "Just you wait," I thought coldly. "I'll make sure you learn that my supposed gentleness can vanish in an instant." Marcus simply stopped going home altogether after that and stayed at Veronica's apartment instead. Meanwhile, Veronica kept desperately trying to reach me through my phone, sending friend request after friend request, but I ignored every single one completely. I wanted to infuriate her, leaving her anger and frustration with absolutely no outlet. I deliberately took medication to induce my period early because I wanted no further intimate contact with Marcus whatsoever. While I continued working on persuading that wealthy client to buy the expensive property, I simultaneously plotted exactly how to utterly ruin Marcus's professional reputation. That old man was truly difficult to handle. He absolutely wouldn't commit to the purchase without getting some kind of physical advantage or intimate payoff first. I kept thinking about what I'd do if it really came down to sleeping with him to close the deal. Even though it technically wasn't my original body, it still felt like mine now, and I couldn't accept forcing myself to do something so degrading. So I simply gave up trying so hard and started deliberately slacking off in my interactions with him. I completely ignored his messages and advances. Are men really that predictable and cheap? Honestly, yes. Maybe I was incredibly lucky, because after I stopped trying and started ignoring him, he actually pursued me even harder than before. The client could clearly sense that I didn't want to do business with him anymore and wasn't interested in his advances, which apparently only made me more appealing to him. He came straight to me at the office one day and announced that he wanted to purchase the specific property I'd recommended, a luxury villa worth 20 million yuan. However, there was one condition: after he made the purchase, would have to agree to go to a hotel room with him. I was genuinely surprised but tried not to show it. I said casually, "Then let's wait until after I receive my commission from the sale." After saying that, I deliberately ignored him completely. The next day, I took a day off from work. I had something much more important to do. I went directly to Marcus's workplace. He worked at a government institution, and all his colleagues there knew he had a wife. Some of them had even met Jasmine at company events over the years. Since we weren't divorced yet, Marcus wouldn't dare to openly appear in public with Veronica. He'd always kept the affair carefully hidden from his professional life. I purposely dressed as provocatively as possible that day, wearing a low-cut top that showed plenty of cleavage and a mini skirt that barely reached my mid-thighs. Then I texted Marcus to let him know I was outside his office building. He came down immediately, looking nervous and furtive. He grabbed my arm roughly and pulled me aside into an isolated stairwell, demanding in a harsh whisper, "Why are you here? Why didn't you give me more advance warning?" I tugged playfully at his arm and said with an innocent smile, "But honey, I did text you ahead of time, didn't I?" He glanced around nervously to make sure no one had seen us, then lowered his voice even further. "But that's way too late. Now that you're already here in the building, the damage is done. Don't just show up at my workplace like this next time, okay? What if someone sees us together? Do you have any idea how much trouble you could cause me?" I was absolutely thrilled inside. So he was this terrified of people discovering his affair? Perfect. I knew exactly what to do from now on. Outwardly, I pretended to look apologetic and obediently agreed to his demands while physically pulling him toward the exit, trying to get him to come outside with me. But he wouldn't budge. Instead, he pulled me deeper into the stairwell, his face pale with anxiety as he practically begged, "Veronica, please stop messing around, okay? Just go home, and I promise I'll come straight to you after work. I'll even buy you expensive gifts." "I'll stop right there then. I'll see you after work," I said with a sweet smile. With that, I left the building quickly. I realized I was getting more and more comfortable inhabiting Veronica's body and playing this role perfectly. I didn't go home but headed instead to the largest shopping plaza in the city center, planning to take a casual stroll and clear my head. I walked into a luxury handbag boutique, intending to reward myself once I received my commission from the villa sale. I had never really indulged myself before. Even after marrying Marcus, I couldn't bring myself to splurge on an expensive designer bag. Every penny had gone toward our household or savings. But this commission, barring any surprises, would be 390,000 yuan. A life-changing amount of money for someone like me. I took a look around the store, and even though I had mentally prepared myself, I was still taken aback by the exorbitant prices. The lowest priced bag was over 10,000 yuan, and my heart ached at the thought of spending that much. Just as I was about to leave the store empty-handed, I suddenly heard a familiar voice saying loudly, "Wrap this one up for me." It was my dear mother-in-law. Instinctively, I wanted to flee immediately. I'd been so accustomed to her disdain and constant bullying over the years that I was always afraid of encountering her. But as I neared the exit, I caught sight of the elegant high heels on my feet and suddenly realized I was no longer that weak, powerless Jasmine. I was young, beautiful Veronica now. I turned around confidently, put on my brightest smile, and walked directly over to my mother-in-law. "Auntie, what brings you here?" I said cheerfully. With her bright red lipstick smeared across her mouth, she looked like she had a gaping bloody wound for lips, utterly terrifying. She stared at me for a moment, clearly trying to place who I was, before suddenly jumping up in delighted surprise. "Veronica, what are you doing here?" she exclaimed. "Shopping, of course," I replied sweetly. "Don't you have work today?" Seeing how familiar and friendly they were with each other made my heart sink even deeper. These despicable mother and son, had I been completely blind before? I'd treated them both like precious treasures for so many years. I quickly suppressed my resentment and smiled warmly, saying, "I just wanted to see if there's a bag that would suit you perfectly, Auntie." I'll buy you one after I get my commission check. I just sold a luxury villa, and the commission will be 390,000 yuan. As expected, women, especially middle-aged and elderly women, absolutely love the prospect of getting expensive things without paying for them themselves. Hearing this news, she was so delighted she couldn't close her mouth, grinning from ear to ear. "Veronica, you're so thoughtful and generous," she gushed. "Nothing like that ugly woman at my house. She's poor and hideous, and lately she's been acting completely strange, saying the weirdest things. I've locked her in the guest room for her own good. Once Marcus divorces her, I'll have him marry you immediately." "Wow, thank you so much, Auntie," I said enthusiastically. "I wish I could get that commission right now so I could buy you a bag this very moment." I almost gagged after saying such sickeningly sweet words to this horrible woman. "Wait until you get your commission, dear Veronica," she said, patting my hand. "But which bag catches your eye right now?" "Auntie will buy you one today as an early welcome gift to our family." As soon as she finished speaking, even the shop assistants were visibly impressed by her apparent generosity. She wore a smug expression while I cursed her silently in my heart. What a foolish woman. I knew her personality extremely well after years of living with her, which was precisely why I'd tested her with the temptation of big future profits to get her to gift me an expensive bag first, taking a good chunk out of her wallet right now. Feigning overwhelming gratitude, I clung to her arm and kept chirping "Auntie, Auntie," repeatedly in the most adorable way possible. Then I deliberately picked out one of the most expensive bags in the store, one worth over 20,000 yuan, and said sweetly, "Auntie, you're truly too good to me. Once I get my commission, I'll buy you an even more expensive one, I promise." She kept saying, "Okay, okay," over and over, completely lost in her sweet fantasy, entirely unaware that I was just feeding her empty promises that would never materialize. Buy her a bag with my hard-earned money? I'd rather buy her a coffin. After purchasing the expensive bag for me, she insisted on treating me to a lavish meal, but I declined, saying I had to go back to work to earn more commission money. Hearing this excuse, she left happily, practically skipping toward home with visions of future expensive gifts dancing in her head. 2 weeks passed. Once my salary and the full commission were safely deposited in my bank account, I quit my job at the real estate company without giving any notice whatsoever. I didn't even care about losing half a month's additional pay. I just wanted out immediately. Of course, the boss was absolutely furious and cursed me out for ages, calling me unprofessional and ungrateful. A couple of days later, I heard from my former colleagues that the wealthy married client's wife had tried to bring a group of people to the company to find me and confront me. But when they discovered I'd already resigned and left, they departed empty-handed and frustrated. The next day, the old man himself also went to the company looking for me, but still couldn't find me. After learning that I had completely resigned and disappeared, he was so enraged that he went and had some of his associates trash parts of the company office. The boss was furious. The old man was furious. Everything was complete chaos. The boss was so angry that he told others in the real estate industry to blacklist Veronica's name entirely. Now Veronica's professional image was completely ruined, her reputation in absolute tatters. Perfect. Meanwhile, I started quietly searching for people with extraordinary spiritual abilities, someone who might be able to help switch our souls back to our original bodies. There was absolutely no way I could live the rest of my entire life trapped in Veronica's body. Although it had worked surprisingly well for my revenge purposes, this wasn't my real self. I hated her. I hated everything she represented. After quitting my job, I stayed home every single day, which confused Marcus quite a bit. He asked why I had resigned so suddenly. I told him the job environment wasn't good and that too many men had been harassing me inappropriately, making me uncomfortable. William flew into a protective rage upon hearing this. He pulled me close and held me tightly in his arms, saying possessively, "You're mine. You're mine and no one else's." I smiled coldly inside. Did he really care that much about Veronica? Good. That would make destroying him even more satisfying. That evening, I deleted all the photos of Marcus from Veronica's social media thoroughly and completely. Then, late one night, I posted a cryptic message on her profile about being single again after a recent breakup, suggesting I was back on the market. Sure enough, within mere moments, numerous men started commenting and liking the post enthusiastically. Several even sent private messages immediately. I wasn't picky or selective at all. I responded flirtatiously to every single one of them. Veronica was beautiful and had cultivated many male customers and admirers over the years. More than a dozen men were soon chatting with me privately, and I encouraged all of them. I deliberately left Veronica's phone unlocked and placed it carelessly where Marcus could easily see it. Sure enough, 2 days later, as I stepped out of the shower wrapped in a towel, I saw Marcus glaring at me with absolute fury in his eyes. He suddenly grabbed me and pinned me roughly against the wall, shoving the phone in my face as he demanded, "Tell me who these men are." Playing the innocent victim, I glanced casually at the phone screen. I saw messages from several different men, some saying they missed me, others asking what I was up to and when we could meet. Quite the lively scene indeed. I flashed Marcus my sweetest smile and said, "It's just that I'm unemployed right now and hoping to get some job referrals from professional contacts. That's all, I swear." But Marcus's anger hadn't subsided at all. He fumed, "You're not allowed to contact any other men. Isn't me supporting you financially enough?" I looked at him with wide, innocent eyes and said weakly, Okay. More than enough, sweetheart. I'm sorry. Was this petty jealousy enough revenge? Not even close. I wanted him to truly understand what betrayal felt like from every possible angle. Next, I went to his workplace during office hours again, but this time, I didn't message him in advance to warn him I was coming. I wore an even more provocative outfit than before, a low-cut top that showed an inappropriate amount of cleavage and a mini skirt so short it barely covered anything. I marched straight upstairs to his floor, asking random people where Marcus worked as I went. By the time I reached his office, absolutely everyone in the building was staring at me curiously, whispering among themselves. Marcus looked like he'd been struck by lightning when he finally saw me standing in his office doorway. He was completely frozen in shock. I swaggered confidently into his office, walked right up to him in front of all his stunned colleagues, and planted a long, passionate kiss directly on his lips. "Sweetheart, I brought you some delicious snacks," I said loudly, placing a decorative box of pastries on his desk for everyone to see. Marcus was utterly stunned and speechless. After a moment of complete shock, he grabbed my arm roughly and practically dragged me outside at a run. As he pulled me along desperately, I kept looking back over my shoulder. All his colleagues were staring at us with their faces full of gossipy delight and scandalized fascination. I was laughing hysterically inside. Serves you right, Marcus. How does public humiliation feel? By the time we finally stopped, we were already outside the building. He was trembling with barely contained rage, raising his hand as if to hit me. I quickly dodged, which only infuriated him even more. When he missed, he yelled at the top of his lungs, "Why did you suddenly show up at my workplace like that? Why? Do you have any idea how much trouble you've caused me? Everyone saw you." I feigned innocent confusion and looked at him with hurt in my eyes. "Since we're about to get married very soon anyway, isn't it normal for me to come visit you and bring you treats? I don't understand why you're so upset." Marcus was so furious he spun around in circles, his anger not subsiding one bit. "But I'm not divorced yet," he shouted. "This counts as cheating during marriage. It could cost me my entire job. Do you understand that?" "Oh," I said casually. "So you do actually know what cheating means after all. Interesting." Then I shrugged and said, "Fine then. Let's just break up. And don't come looking for me anymore either." With that declaration, I turned and walked away immediately, suppressing the overwhelming urge to burst into triumphant laughter as I practically skipped down the street. I never wanted to keep pretending with him anyway. I was going to kick him out of my life in the fastest, most brutal way possible, destroying everything he valued in the process. That evening, I casually called up one of the men who'd been messaging me and invited him to join me for coffee at the most luxurious, visible cafe in the city center. On a whim, I even bought myself a beautiful bouquet of flowers and took a romantic-looking photo while sipping my expensive coffee. I posted it to social media with the caption, "Enjoying some lovely moments," and made absolutely sure to tag the exact location. Not even half an hour after the post went live, Marcus showed up right in front of us at the cafe, exactly as I'd expected and hoped. His eyes were completely bloodshot, and he looked like he wanted to literally tear us both apart with his bare hands. The man sitting across from me tried to stand up politely and ask what was happening, but before he could even finish his sentence, Marcus punched him violently, sending him crashing back onto the sofa. Blood trickled from the man's mouth. Understandably, he wasn't about to just take that lying down. He got back up and retaliated with a solid punch to Marcus's face. Soon they were locked in an absolute brawl, throwing punches wildly. Screams filled the air around us as other customers backed away in fear. I rose elegantly to my feet, outwardly pleading desperately, "Stop fighting. Please stop." But inwardly, I was absolutely cheering them on. Fight harder. Keep going. The longer and more public, the better. Someone must have called the police, because before long, officers arrived at the scene and took all three of us down to the station for questioning. Since there was clear surveillance footage from the cafe showing Marcus throwing the first punch and beating the other man quite severely, and with such concrete video evidence, Marcus was detained for 15 days and fined 10,000 yuan. He also had to compensate the other party for medical expenses and other damages. When Marcus heard this outcome announced, he was completely dumbfounded. He kept muttering over and over in shock, "I'm done. I'm done. My life is over." I knew exactly why he kept saying he was finished. His workplace already knew about his marital infidelity from my previous visit, and now with the added criminal incident of public fighting and detention, there was absolutely no way he could possibly keep his government job. He was definitely getting fired. The day after the detention, when my mother-in-law couldn't reach Marcus by phone, she came directly to Veronica's apartment demanding to know what had happened. I told her that while I was discussing property transaction details with a client at a cafe, Marcus had suddenly appeared and violently attacked the client, resulting in his detention. I also told her that this client just happened to be the wealthy buyer of that expensive villa I'd mentioned, and after being assaulted, he'd come to the company saying he wanted to cancel the entire purchase, even willing to forfeit his substantial deposit. That meant my 390,000 yuan commission had gone up in smoke. When she heard this devastating news, she literally almost fainted right there. Her beloved son had been detained for criminal fighting, and the expensive gift I'd promised her was now completely gone. She couldn't handle both pieces of bad news at once. I twisted the knife even further, saying coldly, "Auntie, maybe Marcus and I are just not meant to be together after all. We've pretty much broken up now. It's better if we all just act like strangers from now on and move forward separately." Hearing this, her eyes actually rolled back in her head, and she started to collapse. I caught her just in time. Even if she was going to faint dramatically, she absolutely couldn't do it inside my apartment. "Veronica, we've been so good to you," she pleaded tearfully. "How could you treat Marcus like this after everything we've done for you?" I said coldly and firmly, "There's no helping it now. Marcus has hurt me too deeply this time. Not only did he forbid me from visiting him at work like a normal girlfriend, but he also seriously injured my important client. I simply can't forgive him. Auntie, you should leave now. Just pretend you never knew me." I opened the door and physically pushed her out into the hallway. She seemed to want to say more, to beg and plead, but I shut the door firmly in her face. After a few moments, I could hear her wailing loudly as she walked away down the corridor. Inside the apartment, I smiled with deep satisfaction. During the time Marcus spent in detention, I continued searching for various spiritual masters and practitioners who claimed to be able to resolve supernatural events. One after another contacted me, but after hearing my bizarre story about soul swapping, none of them felt confident they could actually help. Most admitted they had no experience with anything like this. I had no choice but to keep searching desperately. I never visited Marcus even once during his entire detention period. After I finally got rid of my interfering mother-in-law, Veronica herself came to see me, still trapped in my original body. As soon as she saw me, she lunged forward trying to hit me again. I calmly handed her a pair of sharp scissors and said coldly, "Why don't you just use these instead? After all, this body isn't actually mine anyway. Go ahead, stab me if you want." What exactly do you want from me?" she asked, her voice breaking with helplessness and desperation. I looked down at her with absolute disdain and said with a cruel smile, "I don't want much at all. Just to make you experience exactly what I went through. Just to destroy absolutely everything you care about, the way you destroyed my life." Over the following weeks, I systematically continued dismantling Veronica's entire existence. I sent all the explicit photos and videos to her parents, revealing the full extent of her affair with a married man whose wife had lost a baby because of their relationship. I arranged for her mother's affair to be exposed to her father, leading to their divorce. I made sure Marcus lost his job permanently, with his reputation in the industry completely destroyed. I spent Veronica's money freely, buying things for myself and draining her savings. Finally, after months of searching, I found an elderly spiritual master living in a remote mountain village who claimed he could perform the ritual to switch our souls back. On a night filled with thunder and lightning, with storm clouds gathering dramatically overhead, the master performed an ancient ritual involving candles, incense, and incomprehensible chanting. As lightning struck nearby and thunder shook the very ground, I felt a violent pulling sensation, as if my very soul was being ripped from Veronica's body. Everything went black. When I opened my eyes again, I was staring at my own familiar golden yellow curtains. I was back in my own bedroom, in my own body. I touched my face with trembling hands. It was really me again. Jasmine. I'd returned. I immediately got up and looked in the mirror. My own plain, familiar face stared back at me. I'd never been so happy to see it. I packed a small suitcase with my essential belongings and important documents while my mother-in-law was out. When Marcus was finally released from detention after 15 days, he returned home looking absolutely haggard and broken, like a man who'd lost everything. "Mom, I lost my job," he told his mother quietly. "They fired me. And that woman Veronica broke up with me completely. She betrayed me with multiple other men." His mother was furious, having been tricked by Veronica into buying that expensive handbag and then receiving nothing in return. Just then, there was a knock at the door. The real Veronica, still trapped in Jasmine's body, arrived at their home, looking equally desperate and destroyed. Marcus's mother immediately grabbed her by the hair and started beating her viciously, blaming her for everything that had gone wrong. "Stop. Please stop hitting me," Veronica cried out desperately. "It was all Jasmine's doing. She destroyed everything. She got me fired, made my parents divorce, and now I have nothing left. Marcus is all I have left in this world." I stepped forward calmly from where I'd been watching in the shadows. "If you're going to frame someone, at least pick a believable target," I said coldly. "I've been locked up at home this entire time. How could I have possibly done any of those things? You're clearly just mentally unstable." Marcus and his mother looked at Veronica with disgust and kicked her out of the house forcibly. Then Marcus turned to me, to Jasmine, his wife, with something that almost looked like remorse in his eyes. "I'm truly sorry about our lost child," he said quietly. "Can we just try to live a good life together from now on? Can we start over?" His mother added in her typically condescending tone, "Even though you don't have money and aren't as pretty as Veronica was, you're more honest and reliable. Can you and Marcus just try to make this marriage work?" I pulled my hands away from both of them coldly and said the words I'd been waiting months to say. "Marcus, let's get divorced. Our marriage is over." They were both utterly shocked, as if I'd slapped them. Marcus erupted in fury. "I absolutely will not agree to a divorce. You have nowhere else to go." I laughed bitterly at his arrogance. "Actually, I don't need your agreement at all." I pulled out my phone and showed them the photos and videos I'd saved, Marcus and Veronica together in all their intimate glory. Then I played the most explicit videos at maximum volume so they could hear every sound, every word. You might also want to check your group chats, I said calmly. I sent everything to 9 different group chats with all your friends, family members, and former colleagues using your phone earlier when you were in the shower. Marcus grabbed his phone with shaking hands and saw the messages absolutely exploding across his social circles. His friends and relatives were shocked and disgusted. The messages poured in. We never imagined Marcus was this kind of person. If he were a celebrity, he'd be completely cancelled. His poor wife. This is horrible. Who would ever hire him or trust him again after seeing this? Marcus and his mother stood frozen in complete horror, staring at the phone screen. Since you refuse to divorce me willingly, I'll file a lawsuit, I said firmly. Get ready for court proceedings. My lawyer will be in touch. I grabbed my pre-packed suitcase and walked toward the door. Oh, and one more thing, I said, turning back. I've already transferred all the money from our joint accounts to my personal account. That was money I earned and saved anyway, not yours. You'll find the accounts completely empty. I walked out the door without looking back even once, leaving them both standing there in stunned silence. After consulting with an excellent lawyer to handle all the divorce proceedings, I used my savings to make a down payment on a modest apartment in a city I'd always dreamed of living in, far away from them. Then I went on a long solo trip, ready to reclaim the passion for travel and photography I'd abandoned during my suffocating marriage. Standing before vast mountain landscapes and watching stunning sunsets over the ocean, I smiled genuinely for the first time in years. My new life was finally beginning. I was free.